Welcome to Abnormal, the podcast for normal people who want to do abnormal things. Today we dive into the truth behind an industry that so many of us rely on, supplements, and we're doing it with someone who's been on both sides of the fence. Former pro rugby player turned founder of Pillar Performance, Damien Fitzpatrick. In this episode, you're going to hear what no one tells you about micronutrition, how elite athletes recover, and why so many supplements are basically useless, and how Damien turned 8 knee surgeries and chronic inflammation into a performance company trusted by other companies such as Whoop and some of the world's biggest sports teams. If you want to train better, sleep better, recover better, or just want to understand what your body actually needs, this is the episode for you. But before we get into it, if you could do me a massive favor and subscribe to the channel and also drop a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening to on, so that we can get more guests like Damien on the show. And with that, let's get into it. I can't think of anyone better to ask this question. What's the biggest scam in the supplement industry?
Oh, thanks for having me on, Pete. That's no warm up. I like it. It's great.
No, we're going in raw, man. We're straight in.
Okay, I'm trying to think globally here. I know I'm based here sitting here in Australia. You're in Hong Kong. Listeners are everywhere. I think in our space, obviously, we've come into the space from a micronutrition perspective. I think one of the biggest misconceptions and what a lot of the biggest brands in the world have done is just use the lowest form of ingredients. So they use let's just take a category like magnesium. One of the biggest scams is that they will hero the word magnesium, but not hero the form of magnesium. And like a lot of things, there's 11 different forms of magnesium. Very, very good ones and very, very low ones. And obviously the low ones are the ones that are very cheap and are very good for brands to have in margin. So, and then the biggest brand with the biggest marketing budgets do a very good job just heroing the category, not so much the ingredient.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking a marketing game. And me as an ex-elite athlete, I did not know there were 11 types of magnesium. So that probably goes to show what the consumers would think. I think I'm pretty susceptible to decent marketing as well. Hands up here. So on your hero product is the kind of triple magnesium, right? I want to touch on something that you mentioned at the start there. We're talking about micronutrition. You're an athlete yourself. I'm an athlete. Can you kind of break things down, what you actually mean by micronutrition and how that varies from macro?
Absolutely. And yeah, at Pillar, we call our category performance health. We believe the world of supplementation has, there's often, it depends where you are in the world, but the categorization, you'll have in Australia, we'll have the VMS category, so vitamins and mineral supplements, really similar to the UK. We almost borrow the same naming conventions. That category usually sits in preventative health in pharmacy. In the US, it sits in a category called supplements. And then we have what's called the sports nutrition. If you go into grocery stores or the sports nutrition stores, that traditionally ends up being more of your macronutrient focus. Now, the gap that I found towards the back end of my rugby career was that there was a significant misalignment between the vitamin and mineral category and where it sat in everyday performance. And that, in fact, a lot of high performers, be it, professional athletes, but also through to people who were expecting a lot higher potency from their products, that this group of products and brands over here weren't formulating for this group because they saw it as too small a market. So, from a micronutrition perspective, how you categorize it, we came and thought about it in a really different light, and we decided to call it micronutrition because essentially it covers a far more broader range of the category than just vitamins and minerals, and so that word micronutrition leads me on now to macronutrients. I think athletes, performers, we're all so used to understanding what macronutrients are. Your carbs, your fats, your proteins, we count them. We wanted to attach that knowledge over onto the supplement side, which had always been, around the world had a different name changed. We wanted to bring it to called micronutrition. But the differences are micronutrition equally as important, if not more important. And realistically, as you and I know, like with professional sport, we probably use, protein, creatine, maybe a bit of collagen, but then the rest of the products, maybe 70% of them, were actually to make sure that we were going to training healthy. and also uninjured and with less inflammation. Your omegas, your magnesiums, there are turmeric products in there. There are your B vitamin complexes, a vitamin C for immunity. They don't realize that high performance athletes actually take a considerable amount of these products to perform on a daily basis. And that's the biggest difference is really, and what we're trying to do at Pillar is trying to get people to understand that these products here don't just belong in a pharmacy on a medicinal shelf or for, a 55-year-old plus demographic, which is what all the big brands have always focused their targeting on, I suppose.
You mentioned a couple there of like the health benefits of correct micronutrients. Just reel some off for us. What are the other key benefits? What would you see from these athletes if they had a decent micronutrient complex in their daily diet? What would they start seeing? What changes in their lives and in their performance would they start seeing?
Yeah, and I think the biggest rocks, we always think about it like what are the hierarchies of I suppose of athletic micronutrition, and it really comes down to kind of four headings. It's like we kind of call them recovery, and in that recovery, what's the king of all kings is sleep. So you have kind of sleep and recovery. We have immunity, you have energy, and then for a really important, but from a general population perspective, but inflammation is huge. We are obviously focused on an athletic audience. And within those groups, we're very much talking from an inflammation perspective. You can have gut inflammation, you have brain inflammation. There are ingredients such as omegas which can solve for both of those. We predominantly show a lot of our research now, our education on what actually joints and say muscular inflammation can do. So if you have a natural ability to remove inflammation out of the quads, out of the knees, it allows you to show up on your training day the next day in better shape, and it also keeps people off anti-inflammatory drugs. Like my injury history, I had 3 ACLs, really well documented, but it was, I had to take so many anti-inflammatories and like the team doctors, they don't enjoy handing those medications out to people. So you need to turn to some form of natural alternative. So then if you looked at inflammation, you're looking at curcumin, omegas. There's some amazing products, like eggshell membrane, even boswellia extract, fantastic to remove inflammation. These are growing in maybe some of the more very elite circles of say cycling. But sleep, for sleep, magnesium is obviously the way that we've gone about trying to solve that need state for athletes. From an immunity perspective, vitamin C still reigns king for everyday colds, removal of kind of respiratory issues as well. And then energy, the way we thought about energy is basically the entire B complex family altogether. So when you actually formulate that group of vitamins at a very high rate with a very, very, let's say, non-synthetic, so bioactive or active version of the ingredients, you can actually start to convert the carbohydrates and the energy that people are actually putting in their bodies on their plate into usable energy. So they're the kind of four headings that we think about. And obviously all of them are super important for not only athletes, but just for anyone who's wanting to optimize their daily performance.
I really respect the knowledge that you have on this. And I'm coming from my perspective. Well, I like to think that health and fitness is quite big in my life and performance. But listening to you talk there, it's fucking confusing. And it's like there's so many words that I don't know what they mean, what they do, what their effect is. And I'm asking you now as as the CEO, founder, what part of your focus is actually on education and educating the public that these things that you're talking about and you're the expert in are things that people need? Because if I'm struggling, and I'm not saying that I'm, super elite and stuff, but I've been there. I've been in those environments and I'm struggling to understand what exactly I need to be taking to optimize my daily performance. I can't help but think that the mass population or maybe your target audience would also struggle to be able to put their finger on exactly what you guys are talking about with this stuff.
Yeah, it's a difficult task for a company. We're coming up to 5 years old. It's not easy trying to educate a new category. What I think has been a real turning point in, the global wellness ecosystem has been the access to firstly the access to content and knowledge. Like, I think when COVID hit, it did change the landscape of how people absorb information, and the access to really, really high quality health and wellness experts. Like, you wouldn't have to go far down the street to mention Rhonda Patrick, Andrew Huberman, Peter Attia, some of the biggest health and wellness, let's call them influencers, but really they are thought leaders with the biggest social media, the biggest YouTube, the biggest podcasting channels. I think we have benefited off the back of the growth in that space and the interest of people to absorb health, wellness, longevity. And as part of that, people don't realize, like, there will always be a growing part of people who want to take their physical performance to the next level. Because if you start to get healthier, if you start to be able to spend less time, say, drinking alcohol, waking up earlier, learning about VO2 max testing for your health, which means you're going to start to run. There's only so much running. There's only so much health that you want to be able to do before you go, you know what, I'm going to put my shoes on and actually go and join that group running, or, my partner's now going to the gym. Like, there has been this snowball effect of people learning how to get healthier. And those people who weren't in the gym before getting in the gym, those people who were in the gym and now healthy are actually now lifting more and wanting to compete more. It's why a phenomenon like High Rocks has done what it's done, right? Like, High Rocks is a combination of all of these things happening. This, people drinking less, people understanding what longevity and health looks like, people understanding what hybrid training looks like. And then along comes High Rocks. It is a combination of marathon running and group fitness training. And it is the perfect environment for these people to go, you know what, I need to channel this like love of group training now into some sort of competitive environment, get it out of my system so I can go back in. But realistically, those kind of, you're not going to do High Rocks your entire life, but you are going to be healthy. People will adopt a wellness and health lifestyle and a daily optimization of performance in a long way. So, from an education perspective, it's not easy, and we're always trying to optimize it. We have, we've done a decent job at really leaning in on I suppose the bigger thought leaders in this space, and I will say that the market is growing in terms of what people are understanding, because we have a very technical product. As you can hear, we can take it really, really deep from a technical perspective. Even magnesium, like, people are coming over to our brand globally now. We've sold in kind of 50 countries, and people know what forms of magnesium are in killer triple magnesium as opposed to a standard one in a grocery store. And that's the whole point of difference. It's actually amazing. Like, because we have very specific forms, there is a customer out there who is looking for those forms, and it's growing. Yeah, it's growing more than it was 5 years ago. And I think in 5 years' time, again, you'll see far more of these type of brands and products in your mass retailers across the world.
It's like when people get down that rabbit hole of health and fitness and longevity, they stay there for quite some time. And it almost becomes a personality complex, especially when we're talking about High Rocks. Like, the High Rocks community is really intense and growing quick. So it's no surprise that you see a growing market in this sort of stuff, because people do niche down and people do dig deeper. People will start listening to more podcasts, like you said, with the Hubermans, Attias, and then start asking about the magnesium complex and how to gain that 1%, which used to be reserved for, I suppose, the elite side of sport and performance. It used to be the sports teams, the individual athletes, or the ones competing on the biggest of stages. And now I think we're seeing, which you're explaining, is that that's actually dripping down into the everyday athlete. The hybrid athlete, the ones that do go to the office, but also are trying to change their outlook on performance and what that actually looks like. So how much of like this growth in knowledge in these kind of supplements for you can you think is attributed to the, I don't want to say new form media, but the types of like Hubermans and Attias and those podcasts and stuff? How much is it coming from the industry experts like them? And how much is it coming from kind of users digging deeper themselves and wanting to have that behavioral change with the no drinking, the better sleep and high performance?
I obviously have no one has any actual data on this, but I would say a huge percentage of this movement has come from a collection of 5 to 10 thought leaders in the last 5 years. And this, since when before then did people find listening to people talk about health, neuroscience, longevity interesting, right? It happened
crazy.
during COVID. It's crazy, right? And it happened during COVID. And I really can't think of any other catalyst besides someone listening, someone having a very positive experience in I suppose the knowledge that was provided. They had a positive experience from then going and using a product or a supplement from themselves. And then the one thing that we have seen when someone finds, and use sleep as an example, right? Sleep is such a universal need state across the world. Like if we bring an athlete, may it be a cyclist, or it could be a very keen runner in a family. If they are using a magnesium that's helping their sleep, they are passing it on to their partner the next morning. And the same thing. I think these thought leaders were the tree of, I suppose, of breadth. One person would listen, have a positive experience because they weren't wrong in what they were saying. That person then told not one person, but 10 people. And from there, what we're seeing is it's just having, and eventually, as we're now seeing, like when were ice baths, like how could putting your body through such pain now become, you're seeing ice baths, it will be the new spin class in every gym.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm now speaking with major gym chains, Australia, the UK, that are now looking at the unit economics of dollars and per square meter. They will remove a spin room because they already have a cardio space, and they will put a recovery center in there because their members are demanding it. And I don't have any numbers, but I would say that one of the most notable catalysts to that were these thought leaders just be providing people with education and information.
Have you worked with any of them or reached out, or have they reached out to you?
Yeah, we have had a number of, like, there's a really large ecosystem of this space. They love testing product. So yeah, I mean, a lot of them have. There's one of my favorites is Dr. Rhonda Patrick. I am a self-professed citizen scientist of Omega. Omega and inflammation was the real passion project of getting into this space. Dr. Patrick has done probably some of the best education on omegas for not just everyday health benefits, which are the benefits are vast, but from an athletic perspective, and when we're kind of picking up a lot of that work and now moving it into the research arm, like we launched our blood panel testing kit, so the first kind of brand that now we can do finger pricks. Yeah, we can do finger prick testing.
Awesome. That is awesome.
And that kind of sparked a lot of interest in certain groups, because we never wanted to be that supplement brand that just told people to take a product for the sake of it. We said, no, like if we have the ability to test whether you need Omega, test it now. We will put you on a dosage amount based on what that test says. And then, 12 weeks time, potentially you've now put yourself into an optimal range of kind of 8 to 9% Omega index, and you can lower that dose. Goes counterintuitively to obviously making revenue and selling product. You want people to just keep eating.
Builds trust within the community, and
it builds trust. And I think, going back to your very first question, what is the one thing that people think of the supplement industry? That it is a scam. So we're playing the kind of long game on that philosophy. It's like, yes, you lose dollars, but you gain trust. And what does that do over long term? We're making the bet that we can be in a position in say 5 years' time that is different to maybe a couple of quick fixes.
So that blood work, that will tell the user what they're deficient in any vitamins, minerals, nutrients.
No, so this particular one is an Omega index. We are working now eventually. The vision is to have one finger prick for probably those 3 or 4 key micronutrients we were saying, to be able to tell people, are they deficient? You could go into a doctor in Australia, where we're very highly regulated on bloods. We don't allow at-home blood testing. This is a blood panel test. So the difference of this, a blood panel test for those at home who don't know, it looks, you do a Lancet test. So you do draw blood. You don't draw blood, but you prick blood, kind of like a diabetes test. And then you place it on a panel like this. And so that then gets sent off into the lab. So it's actually not intravenously taking it, which in Australia we can't do. So eventually you get this test. What it does test for is it tests your omega-3 to 6 ratio. But I suppose that it can test for a number of things, but what you're really looking for is your optimal index of omega-3. And the science and research are saying people want to be sitting around 7.5 to 9, 8 and, between 8 and 8.5 being that real bullseye. So if you had like a sliding scale, it would, it kind of goes from yellow into red into green and then back on the higher side. And so that's what we're trying to help people with. Where are people at that scale? How many, what dosage form of omega would they need to get themselves from, say, the yellow into the green? And then to get them on a maintenance dose to allow them to stay in that green for an extended period of time.
What would the telltale signs be then if someone was low or omega deficient?
Fatigue is a big one in omega. And again, this is the thing about micronutrients. It is hard to tell. Like, how do you tell if you're deficient in vitamin D? How do you tell? Like, it is, unless you are very highly optimized with yourself and understand how your body would feel. But oftentimes fatigue is one of the biggest ones. And omega, because omega can also affect your heart as well. So every micronutrient would have a different effect whether you had a deficiency. And some deficiencies show up differently in different people, which is why, again, it's very difficult for people to know, are you deficient? Do you need a supplement or do you not need a supplement? Which is why the only real way to test is to have your bloods taken. Like, no one actually knows. You can't. It's very hard to feel if you know what I'm saying.
I guess that's the thing with micronutrients, right? It is incredibly difficult to feel. Whereas if we're talking about macro, then, I mean, as an athlete, you kind of know if you're low on carbs, if you haven't got enough energy to, before you go on a long run or something, if you don't fuel properly, it's quite obvious, or the telltale signs are more prominent if you haven't fueled properly or you haven't recovered properly in terms of what you're eating and macronutrients. But the micro stuff, yeah, it's tough to go and feel. So getting bloods done, I mean, I've personally never had them done. It's always something that I've really wanted to have done. I really ideally just want to have a whole scan and test of my whole body to see what the fuck is wrong with everything, and someone to give me just every month a subscription of exactly what I need to be optimized and perform at my absolute best. It does, but it's expensive.
Inhibitively expensive.
Health is worth it, I suppose.
There are some very cool. For any listeners in the US, a close friend of mine is doing an amazing company. It's called Rhythm Health. So type in rhythmhealth.com. But very similar to that, you can essentially you get provided a blood draw every month. All of your biomarkers go into your personal system, and the algorithm then works through those trends. And within that system, a doctor will pick up your trends and then be able to provide you with literal, like, your monthly, what you need on a monthly basis. And it is probably, I wish something like that could be in Australia really, really soon. We still have some regulations around that. But what you're talking about there is the future of healthcare and wellness. Like, that is where the world will go. AI has changed the game in terms of the need for a doctor to have to store and analyze all of your data for any one person across. It's too much for human beings to do. Thanks to AI, I think health is going to be one of the most fundamental areas that is going to change for the better with AI. And we're already seeing it with practitioners, doctors being able to use there's so many different pieces of technology now that practitioners can use to just get better care for their patients. So, the one-stop shop on a scan and information basis, I don't actually think is that far around the corner.
Are you guys using AI at all in your processes?
No, not so much. Unfortunately, AI doesn't create consumer goods yet. Thankfully, yeah. You still need someone in physical goods product. AI hasn't done it yet. We eventually, at a scale with the blood testing, will be able to start to implement AI data. Obviously, within the company, different teams use different functions. But for our core product, like, we are a pills and powder business at the heart of what we do. We see ourselves as more of a health and performance ecosystem, but still the core business is pills and powders. So, not disruptable or pretty defensible to AI having any input into that just now.
Just yet. When we're talking
Just yet.
about like data and AI, all that sort of stuff, I saw that you've been working with Whoop and Aura on some studies and seeing about the different data points. Share us more about that. How's that experience been? What have you found? What are the main takeaways that have come away from those studies?
Yeah, we've worked haven't worked with Aura, but we work closely with Whoop. Our head of research, Dr. Dan Plews, he he was instrumental in a lot of these wearable technology companies being able to input this recovery metric called HRV, or heart rate variability, becoming a bit of a buzzword around the longevity and wellness.
Massive buzzword. It's up there
Massive
with
buzzword.
Zone 2. It's up there with Zone 2. Zone 2 and HRV are the two ones.
Zone 2, HRV, VO2 max. So these are Dan's bread and butter. But Dan had a PhD on HRV, which was adopted by the Whoop science team. And because of that, I suppose how the connection came with Whoop, our magnesium, so the triple magnesium, when it hit the market, we looked at what we wanted to solve with that product was recovery, specifically for muscular and physical recovery. We're looking at an athletic demographic. When you think about recovery in that instance, where and how does it happen? It happened during sleep, but particularly in your deep sleep. So when you think about sleep, okay, there is deep sleep and REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. A lot of people would hear about rapid eye movement sleep at a really, really high level. That's the sleep that you need to wake up feeling, oh gosh, I've had a great sleep. I feel refreshed. It actually isn't the sleep that you physiologically recover. That is deep sleep. So what we wanted to look at was to go, okay, how do we get people into deep sleep as quick as possible, for as long as possible, so their muscles, body, and everything regenerates for the next day. And so what we did was we looked into magnesium glycinate. Magnesium glycinate was the key pathway of serotonin to allow people to do that. So when people were taking the product, it actually started to show up if you're wearing wearable technology. So usually I wear a Garmin or I wear a Whoop on my wrists. I have them when I sleep. When people started to take the product, it would show up really, really positively on their wearable tech, and people started to take photos. As I was saying before, when somebody hacks something that is so fundamental to health, like sleep, they have to share it. But people were taking a photo of their watch, their Whoop scores, and then they were tagging Pillar in it. And so Whoop ended up getting in touch with us and said, guys, why is everyone tagging? Let's work out what's happening here. And so the data became it really was the silver bullet that sent the company into some form of recognition internationally. Is how the brand in only 5 years has been able to scale so quickly. Because for the first time, as you said, macronutrients, you can have a measurability behind it. Have you had enough carbs? Did you feel fueled during your run? Micronutrients really difficult to tell over time, and people just get lost in that journey. They're like, oh, I don't know if this is working. I can't bring myself to buy it again. But for the first time, we had a product that was actually able to be measured almost within the 24 hours, and then people started sharing it. So then, we spoke to Whoop and said, okay, guys, we are going. Our vision of the company is we want to actually start to bring this micronutrient education at an elite level into the mass market. We're doing research with professional cycling teams, rugby teams. I said, if you would like to get involved in that, we obviously need a way to test if our product is having benefit on their sleep. Would you like? And they said, absolutely. Like, that's what we do. So Whoop, we've done a number of research papers that are now getting peer reviewed. And Whoop, have provided the devices. They collect the data. We provide the product. Our PhD program obviously collates the paper together, and it's forming this really unique ecosystem. So what Whoop have done, I think they really have changed the fabric of that wearable space. Very aligned to what we do from an athletic performance perspective. But whether it's Whoop or a Ring, there's some other ones out there as well. I personally use Whoop. That again, I think is another reason why people have been found. I suppose the growth in those companies shows you how big the growth in this space is. They all have millions of users now, and these are people who want to wake up and have their health and their metrics ready at their fingertips so they can optimize. Okay, I'm not recovered. I've got to have my ice bath. I need to have my sauna. and the whole thing becomes a connected piece of the puzzle. And then finally, obviously, you then get your blood work done. Like you would have seen Whoop just release the Whoop Labs. So you can now get your blood work done through Whoop. It was always going to happen. And, word on the street is it's only a matter of time until Apple do it as well. And then you're basically connecting the whole world, aren't you?
The whole world. It's, I really like the Whoop story. I don't particularly like the strap myself, purely from a comfort perspective. It was just like grating on me, and I really didn't enjoy it. I've got one of these like silicone straps watches. This is like the Coros. It's good for running. I do quite a bit of running, so it's good for that. Right?
I'm the same.
Yeah, I just needed that silicone strap. So when you're showering in Hong Kong, you have like 3 showers a day. So I was like, the strap was just like never drying, and it was like killing my skin. But I did give it a go. Obviously, love the data. And I think it's quite similar. I've tried the rings, I've tried the watches, I've tried the straps. And coming from a background in elite sport, you normally got similar data when you were, as a pro rugby player or pro athlete, but that was more performance based in terms of when you're actually out on the field. Like you're wearing a GPS, you're wearing a heart rate, you're seeing your top speeds, your collisions, but nothing outside of that, nothing outside of the training pitch for your actual recovery, which is what you guys are focused on here. Was your experience the same when you were in your sporting days as well?
Totally. I've seen it change since I retired. I retired in 2021, went straight into launching Pillar. We never took, rugby, I think very similar to, say, Australian rules football, even European soccer. There's no one that was really doing anything different, but we'd obviously have all of our meters tracked, collision, we'd wear the GPS data. GPS data throughout my career when I started didn't exist. By the end of it, it was all anyone was looking at from a training perspective. SSC team were looking at meters per second, velocity seconds, how many high speed running meters. You would have had that as well. That was a big thing. Have we clocked enough high speed running meters before a game to make sure we're not tearing hamstrings, etc.? Very rarely did anyone think about collecting data overnight to see how we would show up. One of the things we get the privilege of working across a number of sports, but professional cycling is without a doubt the most advanced from a sports science perspective I've come across, and that's dealing with most of not even the major basketball leagues, even NFL. I don't think there has been a level of sports science that I have seen that compares to pro cycling. Now, most of the pro cycling teams issue their riders with a wearable. It's either a Whoop, it's an Aura wearing. All the riders are wearing it themselves. They are tracking and measuring every minute of every inch of these riders, because it is so critical in an event like the Tour de France, where wins and losses are on a knife's edge. Understanding where your athletes and riders are on a daily basis is just so fundamental for them. And again, this HR, like that's where we've come in. They do through our I suppose our research arm of the business. The understanding of HRV is still quite new in sports science, if in science in general, and those teams are very keen to learn what it could actually mean to get just as another data metric for recovery. How do they tell if a rider is ready to actually go? Because remember, in cycling, these teams are choosing which days they're going to go, and so if that day was the day they had planned, but they actually realistically know their key rider, their GC rider is not ready, then they won't roll the dice on that day. They might hold them back because, we're all athletes, right? If the coach goes, "Are you ready?" You just say, "Yeah, I'm ready."
Yeah, of course.
But, you're never going to tell the team that 5 other guys are in the team relying on you. You're not going to say, "I'm not ready." But I think they want to have the data to show that, this guy might think he's ready, but he's actually not.
It's a crazy approach, how things have changed. And I agree, the cycling side is like next level, right? Any documentary out there. I had the privilege this week of covering some of the national games here in China, and I went to the indoor cycling at the velodrome, and I know it's very surface level, but my God, you see some of these athletes sprinting around the indoor velodrome and you're like, holy shit, their quads are just like nothing I've ever seen before. And
those velodrome guys they're
nuts. It's nuts.
The quad, it's not well known enough how big the legs are on track cyclists. It
No,
should be more
it's
well documented. Yeah.
it really should. If I had legs like that, I would be posting them everywhere. Like, wow, wow, wow. It is impressive. So Damien, I want to talk about more your founding story now. And, I know you were a professional sportsman, had a really big career as a professional sportsman, lots of injuries. But I'd love to know what happened during your career, which then triggered this kind of curiosity down this route that you've taken now in terms of the micronutrients, the recovery, and sports performance. Was there anything, or talk us through that journey in your own words? How did you come about that?
Yeah. It was, yeah, my journey's pretty well documented. I had some severe injury, I suppose, injury incidents in my career. I would love to have spent more time on the field, but I came out of high school. I was, signed directly out of high school, had, just say the career at my feet, everything was moving to plan. And around 24, I had my first ACL injury. And that injury, it's not unusual. What is unusual though is like I literally did the same knee 3 years in a row, not even barely getting back on the field. Like it was just one after the other, and to the point where, so I'd nearly had 2.5 years out. Luckily, I'd provided enough, I suppose, clout in my ability that the teams still wanted to invest in me, even though at that time I was going to retire. By that stage, I was playing in France. The French club at the time was even still like, Damien, before you decide to retire, so I was 25 at the time, before you decide to retire, please go see this one surgeon. And this surgeon actually did find the solution. I had a genetic defect, and I went and had a surgery called a tibial osteotomy, and I was the first rugby player in the world to ever return from this surgery. The surgeon that did it on me, his name is Bertrand Sonnery-Cotter. Very, very thankful for him. So he was the first surgeon in the world that brought a professional soccer player and a rugby player back onto the field. So, which is why the club was very keen to put me in front of this doctor, because
Wow.
He was able to do it with a footballer for the Tottenham Hotspurs. So he got me back on the field. I went back to Australia, continued to play with the Waratahs for another 5 years. But because of the severity of that injury, I'd had obviously 3 ACLs. You have to take grafts from all parts of your body for those surgeries. But then the final time, what an osteotomy is, you actually have to break your leg and realign it. So I had a heap of metal put in. And then I played in the front row, right? So I had to be, where rugby was headed is you could play, hooker as a mobile hooker around 106, 107. But the game has just changed now. You look at the size of the South African team. Like you just cannot play international type 5 unless you're getting upwards of 115, 120 kilos. Like you look at the English team, like it's just reality now. And unfortunately, I was told that my knee, I could not carry that much weight up top if I wanted to continue playing. Not only that, though, because my knee was so compromised, I was just taking on so much inflammation. I had no cartilage left in my knee. So I essentially had to get to the game on a Saturday, I was just taking so many anti-inflammatories. And what I was doing was I needed to find an alternative, because the team doctors said, Damien, like we can't keep administering these, the tablets to you. And I was like, well, I need to play. So can we find an alternative? And myself and our medical team at the time and dietitians, we started to look into omegas, curcumins, and I was very interested in the science. I was, as a personality, I was never the kind of just take it and don't ask questions. If anyone or my teammates talk, I was always the guy that was asking questions. Like I probably was a pain in the ass to the front office, the middle office, back office. It's in my nature to be very inquisitive. Business was always a real interest of mine as well. And so once I realized that there was a gap in this space, because the products that we were then using to try and solve that gap, we found out that they essentially weren't being targeted at athletes. They were targeting, and even these were the best brands that weren't just in the grocery stores. These were in Australia called the practitioner only category. It's in a different area of pharmacy, behind lock and key. That's what professional sport was using, and even those were nowhere near the sports science that we were following. And I thought that was an opportunity, because I felt that there was going to be this growing population of people that thought and wanted, if it was good enough for a professional athlete, then it's good enough for me. I wanted to scratch that itch, and that itch became really loud in the back of my head around that 2021 period, and it coincided with COVID coming and the competition being put on hold, and it was actually when the competition got kind of halfway, kind of got all the competitions in professional sport got stopped halfway through them in the year of 2020. That was when I actually decided that I'm gonna pursue this full time. And went about that journey. So it was a crazy journey because we are a pharmaceutical company by regulation. So that did mean I had to raise capital, which was a new thing for me. I was playing professional sport. I'd never spoken to investors. We were looking into having to use manufacturing with pharmaceutical pharmaceutical manufacturing. But with each thing, if you have a purpose and you're driven to it, you just get to one problem and cross it, then get to the next problem and you cross it, and you just each day just chip away at them. And if what you're looking at is big enough, then eventually the field starts to open and you come into a few green shoots. But that was the journey into the space. It was purely driven by the fact that I was trying to find the products that I wish I had. And I retired before I was able to create them. But now the goal is to be able to have them for people not only getting paid to play sport, but for people who want to just optimize health.
I love that. And it's certainly a product that I wish that I had when I was playing professional sport as well, because I was similar to you. I had 2 ACLs, meniscus, back to back sort of thing. And it was that kind of stuff, which was just, you're sick of popping pills, right? You're sick of this.
Totally.
You almost feel like, a lab rat, or almost, you've just gone under the knife, you're in surgery, and then you're just taking all these pills to get the swelling down. And you're just going from like equipment, pill to pill. And you're like, surely there's something more natural here that can be happening that my body needs. But again, that never was tested, or never advised in that sort of area. So yeah, I'm sure the elite athletes and sports teams will be very thankful of your work now. In that first year then, did you have like a breakthrough moment where first year of going full time in the business, did you have a moment where you're like, okay, it was a good idea, it was a great decision, we've made it, but I've done the right thing here?
I think the first moment where I said, okay, well, we've solved a problem for someone, was, albeit that group of people was relatively small, too small to say you've made it, or to have a very, very big business. When we launched, because we launched with a category of product which has never before been athlete safe. So these big pharma brands that have always looked at the micronutrition category as preventative health have always thought, okay, who buys that product on behalf of a household? It's very specific. So I haven't made this up, because I heard this from, and this is an industry norm. They target a demographic of women that are 55-year-old plus, because roughly by 55, when you think about it, teenage children, husband, it's that demographic which are buying supplements on behalf of the whole household. So that's who the big pharma have always focused formulation and marketing on. Now, because of that, they never felt the need to inform sport certify anything. So the biggest gripe in professional sport, not only in Australia, but around the world, is the fact that sometimes the best health products and the best, even medication is not safe for athletes because of the WADA program. We know WADA has 200 banned substances. Sometimes there's an amazing product that can help with inflammation and immunity, for example, like anagraphis. It's an amazing botanical. It's used in a lot of immunity drugs, over-the-counter drugs, but also some really, really potent ones. It actually has a substance in it called hinamine, and a lot of players actually, when they get sick, they would like to take this. Very, very harmless for 90% of cases. But what hinamine does is it's a bit of an upper. So WADA say no, that can't be on the banned list. And anyway, so we decided, okay, if we launch this, we solve from a potency perspective, but when we launch this range, we're going to make sure absolutely everything is Informed Sport certified. It means it was really difficult to do because it's very expensive and it slows down production times. It's expensive. Informed Sport is the program we use. It is globally for us. We believe it's been the oldest around the space. It is based in the UK, so we have to send our product from Australia into the UK. But what it did do, it meant that when we launched a brand, basically every professional team in the country heard about it and came immediately over to it. So I always am really proud that our first customers were the biggest teams in our country. So literally,
Wow.
first invoices through the door were 5 of the 6 biggest teams, and it was fun sending those out. Australia only has 30 professional teams though, right? So we had to work out how to sell it to other people, but I knew we were on to something in the fact that if we could, we believe in the top-down approach, so we actually formulate for the top and educate that everyone is good enough. If you're using a creatine and your name is Susan and you're 55 years old, creatine is creatine whether you're a Tour de France rider or you're Susan. Why does a Tour de France rider get a creatine that is more pure and better than the one you take? There is no reason. It's the same substance. You may need slightly less of it based on what you're aiming for, but it is the same product. And you deserve the same amount of testing that this one does to make sure there is no nasties in it. And that's what we did. We said, okay, if we formulate it good enough for here, we're going to then educate that everyone should be looking for that same level of quality. So that was the first moment.
I love that. That's so cool. The first customers are probably teams you used to play against as well, right?
It was actually a team in Australia called Collingwood FC. So it was actually a different sport, but I loved and hated. I think they're like the Man City of Australian football. Right. You either they're very good. They're always up there. You either love them or you despise them. Yep.
I know exactly the vibe you're going with. As soon as you said they're the Man City of Australia, I knew exactly what you meant.
Yeah.
What's where are you guys going to be in 5 years' time then, man? What's the plan for the company and for yourself?
I think we're very ambitious where the brand can get to. I suppose now we have a legacy in micronutrition. I think the brand and our heritage will always stay there. We're very ambitious horizontally where the pillar brand has permission to play and solve problems for. So I think in 5 years' time, you see us playing in wider performance health categories. I think we will. I would like, our ambition is that we want to be known for as much health as performance. So that means to continue to invest in our research arm. So we have an internal PhD arm, continuing to invest in this testing protocol. So how do we educate people that you can now test for supplements to find out actually you need them? That's going to form a really important part of what we do. And I'm hoping that the brand, as we scale horizontally from a product perspective, we can continue to scale that. It's going to be very difficult to scale every single product into international markets. We've been thankful that we've been able to get the core range of micronutrients in most key countries in the world now at a very short amount of time. So we manufacture in 3 different parts of the world now: UK, into Europe, in the US, and Australia. So we have 3 different manufacturing arms, 3 arms of business. I would like to see us be able to scale more of our range that is here and core in Australia, which is doing really well, be able to continue to scale that internationally, and just be known for, I hope in 5 years when people mention Pillar, we are on some more household shelves, and not just be seen as a brand for potentially those very elite high performers or those people that are really looking to the biohackers of the world, people probably outside of sport, they may be an initial customer. I hope people start to recognize the brand for maybe bringing a high standard to the industry.
It's cool. I really like that. And Damien, as you know, the podcast is called Abnormal. It's for normal people who want to do abnormal things, of which you are very much one of them, doing abnormal things. So if you had one piece of advice for anyone out there listening who wants to do something abnormal in their lives, what would your one piece of advice be?
I'd say just preparation. Abnormal is very, very obtainable if you prepare for it. Abnormal becomes painful if you don't have, if you go into it and you haven't kind of pre-thought about it. But I had, I try now and mentor and help as many people that want to leave a job and start their own business, or just do something that takes them out of their comfort zone, and probably more on the business side now, which is great. I kind of speak to a lot of retiring athletes, and I just say, guys, like just put a few months of preparation into what you'll be like, how, where you'll be in that stage of your life, because it's not easy, but it's manageable if you prepare. So my biggest advice to people would be, you've got to don't let that preparation time throw you off, but just it's taking a few extra steps to think about how I'm actually going to go about this venture or this task, is actually going to make your life really, really helpful. Because like anything in life that's worth doing, it's challenging, and anything challenging is stressful, but you can always prepare for stress. Just, if you get used to that kind of being uncomfortable, I recommend that for anyone.
Sound advice. Damien, thank you so much for joining us, man. Really, really appreciate your time. Love your story. Love what you guys are doing. And very much looking forward to following along for the next 5-year journey and seeing the AI and blood work take over the world, and you guys being the front runners.
Cheers, Pete. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Abnormal. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel and give us a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening or watching on right now, as it goes a long way to help growing the show. Thank you, and see you in the next one.